Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alamin. Wassalatu wassalamu ala Sayyidil Mursaleen. Amma ba'd, fa'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Wassalatu wassalamu alayka ya Rasulullah wa ala alika wa ashabika ya Habiballah. Wassalatu wassalamu alayka ya Nabiyallah wa ala alika wa ashabika ya Nurallah. Welcome, dear viewers, to another segment of Do Not Harm Others. The Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wasallam said that recites salat upon me, Allah Ta'ala will send mercies upon you. Sallu ala al-Habib sallallahu ta'ala ala Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wasallam. Dear viewers, remember that each one of us, just as we have come to this dunya, there will be a time when we leave this dunya. We have to depart. And Islam takes care of every stage of life. When we're born, throughout our life, and even when we die, there are rules and principles that must be abided. When a person passes away, he leaves possessions behind, assets, wealth. Now that wealth, those assets that he leaves behind must be distributed in accordance to Quranic law, in accordance to those verses mentioned in Al-Quran Al-Kareem regarding inheritance, wiratha. And it's not permissible for someone to deprive his heirs, his inheritors, and instead to say, oh, I've willed that all my money will go so-and-so place, or to so-and-so person. It's not possible. Listen to this narration. Sayyiduna Sa'ad bin Abi Waqqas radiyallahu ta'ala states, during the year when the conquest of Makkah took place, I fell so ill that I was near death. Qareeb al-Maut. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam came to see me, to visit me, to inquire about my health. I said, Ya Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, I have a lot of wealth, I only have one daughter. Should I make a will for all of my wealth to be given away? The Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, no. I said, 2/3 of my wealth? Make a wasiyah, a will regarding that? The Prophet alayhi salam again said no. I said, half of my wealth? Again the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam answered in the negative. That I said, 1/3 of my wealth? And the Prophet ﷺ said, 1/3. But even 1/3 is a lot. Then the Prophet ﷺ mentioned some beautiful words. He said, for you to leave your inheritors in a state that they are wealthy, they're affluent, they're comfortable, this is better than for you to leave them in a state of poverty, and then thereafter they have to beg to make ends meet. The Prophet ﷺ said, you will not spend anything for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, except that you will be rewarded for it. Even that morsel of food which you give to your wife, which you feed your wife with. Mufti Ahmad Yar Khan Naimi rahmatullahi alayhi writes in the commentary of this hadith, he says, the dying person, the person about to leave the world, he is only allowed to make a wasiyah, a will regarding 1/3 of his wealth, not more than that. And if a person were to make a will in more than 1/3 of his wealth, it will not be implemented. Mufti Sahib says that to make a will in less than 1/3 is even better, because that is what the Prophet ﷺ actually instructed. He called it more. He called even 1/3 as being more. We also know through this hadith that to show good conduct towards your relatives, your kin, your close relatives, blood relatives, this is greater, superior than showing good conduct to non-relatives. Because when you make a will, you could make it for anyone, your best friend or someone you know. Whereas when you leave money behind for your inheritors, that's directly going to your blood relatives, to your family members. And the Prophet ﷺ preferred that your wealth goes to your family members rather than outside. That's what we learn from the hadith. And towards the end, where it says that whatever you do for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you'll be rewarded for it. So if you were to leave most of your wealth for your inheritors, intending thereby to please Allah, inshallah you'll get the reward for that. Allah ta'ala will be pleased with you, and you'll earn more reward. So when making a will, you should make it in less than 1/3. And the masla, as mentioned in Bahari Shariat, is the dying person cannot make a will regarding his entire wealth whilst his inheritors are mawjood, are present and existent. Why? Because this would harm them. They wouldn't receive anything. So look at the teachings of Islam, telling us about to fulfill the rights of our relatives, our blood relatives, our close relatives, who we spent our whole life with. So Islam wants us to fulfill their right, not to waste their right. Listen to a hadith regarding the importance of helping your relatives fulfilling their rights. This is in Tirmidhi. The Prophet ﷺ said, a man and a woman spent 60 years worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, obeying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And when their time to depart came close, when they were about to leave this world, they were about to die, if they were to make a will in such a way that it causes harm, then the fire of hell would become wajib for them. What is the explanation of this hadith? Mufti Ahmad Yar Khan Naimi Rahmatullahi alayhi says, first of all, 60 years doesn't specifically mean 60 years, it refers to a long duration. That's the meaning here. It could be more than 60 years, could be less than 60 years. What does it mean by when the time of death comes close? It means the signs of death. A dead person obviously can't make any wasiyah, but the signs of death are close. Meaning a person, it's understood that he's about to depart from this world. He stopped eating, become weak beyond imagination. It's understood that a person is close to his death. Mufti Sahib Rahmatullahi alayhi says, making a will at that time, or making a will to cause harm, what does this mean? This means, and he gives a few examples. Number one, making a will with the intention of harming the inheritors, so they receive less, or they don't receive anything. He makes a wasiyah that 1/3 should be given, so that the inheritors receive less. Another example is a person makes a will that my money goes to so-and-so, and that person is evil. Those people he has willed for his money to go to, they're transgressors, they're wrongdoers. They will end up misusing that wealth. Or he gives it to a gangster, somebody who is a very evil, bad person. And that person may even be close to the warithin. He may end up harming them, the person who receives that wealth. A third example he gives, that he first made a will, the person who was about to pass away, and then at the time of death, he does ruju from that in such a way that the person he had initially made a will for now suffers, meaning he doesn't get anything. The Prophet ﷺ said, such people, hell is wajib for them. Regarding this, Mufti Sahib has said that they will become deserving of the fire of hell. And whether a person ends up in hell or not, that's the mashiyah of Allah, that's the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But one makes himself worthy of punishment. Just like when people commit major sins, they make themselves worthy of hell. Whether Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala punishes him with hellfire or not, that's a different matter altogether. That's up to the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If he wants, he can. If he doesn't will, he will forgive. But a person makes himself worthy of hell. So we need to ensure that we are far away from such crimes, such cases where we are depriving our inheritors, where we are harming our inheritors. We can't harm them. We must love them. We must show affection to them. And when making a will, we should also be mindful of their rights as well. May Allah Ta'ala grant us tawfiq to do amal. Ameen. Bijahi Nabi al-Ameen. Sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam.
We love Madani Channel. We love Madani Channel.